Well, hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Summer Spotlight. How is everyone doing today? Out here in Arizona, July has finally arrived a week late, and it's monsoon season, and everything is so humid. It's just that we're not used to it, so forgive my whining. I hope that the weather is treating you kindly wherever you're at. I know it's hot all over the U.S. I'm sure around the world there's got to be somewhere where it's perfect right now, and I hope you're there. Let me introduce you to today's guest. This guy is pretty amazing, actually. I love what he's done with his business and with his choices in life after serving in the military. So let me just stop babbling and introduce you to Mr. Chris Greenfield, founder and president of Roasters Marketplace. Thank you so much for joining me today, Chris. How are you?
I'm good, good. How are you this afternoon?
Very good, thanks.
Or you're still morning time though, so I'm in the future, right?
Yes, you are in the future. You are, I believe, 2 hours older than me, sir. At any given time.
Definitely.
Yeah, you're down in Houston, aren't you? How's the weather down there?
Hot and humid, but beautiful. We
Yeah.
we we had that dust cloud here for about a week, and it was kind of overcast and muggy. And now the sun's out and beautiful, and we're going to be jumping in the pool here in a little bit.
Oh, that sounds awesome. I can't wait to do that myself. So give me a little bit of an idea of your pathway through life because, I know that you're a military veteran. I know that you waited to start a family until later in your life, and that you love coffee. So how do all those three things connect?
Well, you summed it up. I mean, that's the whole package there. Uh, I joined the military right out of high school. I spent almost 14 years active duty. I did everything. My first 3 years, I was a cook, actually. I did my first tour in Iraq in 2004, and that experience led me to change my job. And so I switched over to be infantry and stuck with that job for the remaining time that I was in the service. I got out in 2013 to pursue uh, getting married to my longtime girlfriend. Now we've been married, I believe, going on 6 years now, or after 6 years, going on seven.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Started school right before I was actually technically still active duty when I started college. And I don't know if you can hear the girls in the background screaming, but we've got two little girls, a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, almost 3-year-old. And it's just been a heck of a ride. I wish I could go back to when I got out and said, hey, you don't need to go to school for this. You need to go to school for social media marketing and web design because that is what I ended up doing instead of being a history teacher.
I gotta say, I know quite a few people who have gone to college or university for a particular um, um, field, and then their life path just took them in a different area. My brother, similarly, he went to school to become an art teacher, and he does computer stuff. He's very tech, and he runs like I can't even begin to describe it. But he handles all of the computer systems for all the ordering for a certain company and stuff, and it's pretty intense. But I guess what I'm trying to say is you're not alone in shifting paths like that. And don't we all wish we could go back? Do it over.
Now, one of my roasters actually on my website is in his probably third or fourth career field as a coffee roaster and spent a long time in one job. And he talks about how it's like almost like a modern renaissance. Everybody's got the different tools of the trade that you apply to your everyday life. There's no more. You're just not in one job. Nobody's in one job in one career hardly anymore forever. And it's such an amazing time.
It is. It really is. We're living 4 or 5 lifetimes compared to what our forefathers did 200 years ago or whatever. Somebody did something or that for life for the most part, right? But we're getting off topic here. How did you get into specialty coffees? I mean,
So
it's kind
at
of
the
niche.
time, It is. It's actually a pretty big niche. So, coffee is the second most consumed commodity in the world, only beat out by oil. So, it's a pretty big industry, actually. Yeah, and specialty coffee makes up a small percentage of that. And when I say coffee is graded on a rating scale between 1 and 100. Okay. And specialty coffee is basically anything that's rated 80 or 84 or higher. It's specialty coffee. So it's the top 15% of coffee in the world is rated as specialty. And that is what you get when you go to a really, really good cafe, or some of the
I just lost your sound.
Can you hear me?
No, I can. Okay. Go ahead.
Some of the higher end Starbucks products are specialty coffee. If you go in and you buy one of their, special, one of their special seasonal coffees, that'll be specialty coffee. But what most people are used to is commodity level coffee, which is like your Folgers and your Maxwell House. Doesn't necessarily score the highest. And how I got involved in it is I was doing websites. I was building websites for people and working for another company on the side. And then I had somebody approach me to build a coffee website. And I started researching specialty coffee because that would have been that market had I got that job. And, I bought coffee from a couple small batch roasters. And I didn't even know people roasted coffee on their own or roasted it in how these guys do it. And it was just such an amazing process. I was like, I've got to get into this industry. And now here I am.
That's awesome. Gotta love it when you have an opportunity and find something that sparks you up, and then you're actually able to do it. There's so many people that are working in jobs that they just detest. So it's really wonderful to hear people go, you know what, this just kind of lit me up, and here I am.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. If I had a little bit more time to go back, one of those time travel things again, mm-hmm. If I could go back and do a little bit more research, I would have.
I'm sorry, I lost it again. Your audio.
My audio again?
Now it's back again. I don't know what's going on with your system.
Let me make sure everything's plugged in here.
Okay.
Right. Hold on just a second.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure I don't have any. Go away. A microphone. Okay. Hold on.
Okay, now I should sound a lot better now.
You do sound a lot better now. That's like magic.
Okay. Those earbuds that I was complaining about a while ago took over my sound.
Of course
I apologize.
No worries. I'm really glad that you fixed it, because you sound a lot better now.
I bet.
Better. I love your microphone.
Thank you.
So you were telling us about, like finding that if you had more time to go back and redo again.
Yes. So we went, it was kind of one of those perfect transition periods. I was to the point where I was leaving the company that I was currently with. And, my wife and I were out having dinner one night, and we came up with the name Roasters Marketplace. And I was like, oh, that's got to be taken.
Right?
It's
a good name.
Good. It's a good name. And so after a few more Mai Tais at Tommy Bahamas, we went home, and first thing I did was go online and see if the domain was open, and it was. And so I bought it and about 6 different variations of it right then, so I would own them all. Mm-hmm. And started the company right there on a Friday night. Basically, it was like, well, okay, we're doing this.
Nice.
And that was the first weekend of November 2019, and here I am 7 months later. I've got almost 30 roasters currently live on the website, with another 10 roasters in the wings waiting to be onboarded to the website, and have a little bit over 250 different specialty coffee selections.
That's amazing. What is that, 7 months, 8 months?
Yeah, 8 months.
That's incredible. And you have your own show as well, don't you? You've got a Common Grounds podcast.
And we do have the Common Grounds podcast. So I've been into podcasting, and I didn't even realize I was into it as much as I was until I started my own. But I've been listening to podcasts for over a decade, easy. And one of the things that really intrigued me about these small batch roasters was their stories. They all have something interesting. They all have a different story to whether, like my buddy Tim, you know, he's in the IT field for like 40 years. It from the time where computers were like room size until the time that we have, you know, the computing power in our pocket of a space command module. But
That's true.
Everybody has a different story. And I thought that the ones I talked to, everybody I engaged with, all had a cool story to tell. And I'm a big fan of farmers markets. I love going to farmers markets, not necessarily because it's a farmers market, but because you get to meet the people that are crafting what you're consuming.
That's great.
And it's a priceless, you can't beat it. I mean, you really, really can't. And that is the way I want my website to feel once eventually we get to that point, is to where you go in and you can meet the coffee roaster on the podcast. You can learn more about Chris, or I've got like 6 different Chris's that roast coffee. Apparently it's a popular field for people named Chris, apparently. But there's so many interesting stories that they can tell, and the story of coffee in itself is really interesting. And I just wanted to share that and really, really good coffee with people. So I started the podcast.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Okay, so I have a couple of other questions for you here.
Okay.
Now, every morning I make my cup of Folgers. I have this amazing coffee maker that does pods. You can do grounds. You can do a full pot. You can do individual. And so I put my Folgers in there, and I brew that, and then I put some nootropics in it and a lump of coconut oil, and I mix that up in the blender. And that's what I drink first thing every morning. Recently, I got courageous, and I got some vanilla hazelnut coffee, right? And it makes my little blend a little bit easier to swallow. The nootropics aren't all that great, right? But what can I do to make that base coffee, whether I'm using Folgers, whether I'm using a flavored blend, you know, and just picking it up at the grocery store, how can I make my basic coffee taste better?
So if you're using, so I take it you said pod, so I take it that you're using a Keurig machine or a Keurig-like machine.
I'm using a Keurig-like machine with loose grounds in a individual sized basket.
Okay. So one of the things that you can do to make that better is figure out what your perfect coffee to water ratio is for whatever you're brewing. And one way you can do that.
Okay.
This is why I have the shelf here. Is use a scale. If you have a food scale at home, just your standard food scale, it'll work. You don't need a fancy coffee scale like this one, or I've got coffee scales everywhere. Or like this one.
Sure, those are coffee scales, Chris.
They're coffee scales. They are coffee scales. They have it has a timer. That's the thing. That's what makes it let me show you. So we're not I'm not weighing out anything crazy here.
Okay.
But it's got a timer on it. Well, you can't see it. Anyway.
Why does it need a timer? What's
so
the benefit of
your
that?
brew. So how long your brew strength has to deal with a couple different factors.
Okay.
Your water temperature, your water to coffee ratio, how much water, how much coffee, and the time it takes to brew. And so like on your coffee pot, I assume you have some little settings to where you can say a strong brew, or I'm just doing 1 cup. It figures out all the ratios for you and how fast that water will be poured over the coffee for it to brew for you. Um,
Now, why is timing so important?
well, in some brew methods, the longer it takes, the stronger the coffee will be.
Okay.
The more you're extracting coffee. That's what it boils down to, is
Literally.
the longer, literally, yeah, the longer it takes to brew, typically you get a stronger cup of coffee up until a certain point. Usually what we're shooting for with a really good coffee extraction is between 8 and 25% of the coffee is extracted into your cup. And that usually gives you enough coffee flavor without being overly bitter. And so what you can do to make better coffee is say, this cup holds, hold on, let me get a little bit of product placement
here.
There
you go.
This cup holds 20 ounces of water, okay? Which equals about 580 to 600 grams of water when it comes down to it. And so what I need to know is how much water to how much coffee to how long. And so with your coffee pot, to make really, really good coffee, you would say, my coffee pot here, I got a little mini, see, look at this.
Nice. That's cute.
Right. So if your coffee pot holds 5 cups and you make 5 cups every time, it's better if you know that 5 cups weigh 500 grams. And then you can figure out, if it's 500 grams of water, I need 40 grams of coffee, depending on how your strength is.
All right. So I guess then the best way is kind of to test it out and see, if you prefer the lighter, keep one thing constant like the time, which I can't control with my coffee pot, right? It's just going to brew at the rate it brews. So I can find out how long that actually takes, and then the other 2 variables play with.
Right. You can add more coffee or add less water. Right. One of those 2 variables accordingly.
Right. Awesome.
Typically, you can also, by taste, you can say, okay, this is too bitter. Okay, so maybe you put too much coffee in there. Hold on a second.
Are they safe?
Yeah, they're safe. I got the door cracked. They're okay. I gave them a bunch of cookies.
Oh, God.
I gave them a bunch of cookies and turned on Dinosaur Train for them. So they're okay. They'll come in. Awesome. They'll bust in here without a problem. Speaking of which, hang on a second.
Okay.
Okay, hang on. I'll have to be right back. I've got to go turn on the TV.
Okay.
Come on, ladies. Let's go.
Well, I will try to entertain you all while he's gone. Wrong one. Hold on a second. There we go. So this is a great opportunity to talk about how amazing it is and how wonderful it is to be able to work from home and have the ability to step away, even in a moment that you're committed to something else, and take care of what needs to be taken care of for your families. And I think, honestly, this is just my opinion, as the quarantine is lifted and we open up and we start getting back to normal, I honestly hope that as many people as possible that have families can continue to work at home with their families so that they can be available in any given moment and be there for their kids. And we are back. Thank you for coming back so quickly, Chris.
Luckily, my office is located right next to the playroom, so it's just a quick jump for me to go over there. But you're totally right on the work from home. I've worked from home for probably, well, if you count when I was going to school, when I was going to college right after I've got out, I've been working from home since 2013, and so it's not really a different. There's no change for me. My biggest change is typically in the summertime, we would go to a pool in the afternoon. We would go to a park in the morning. We would be outside all day. I would wear them out. And then I would come home and do most of my work in the evening. But now, since we can't do that, it's just a constant struggle to try to keep them entertained. That's not in front of the TV all day, or we're just sitting out by the pool, kind of staring at each other, because that's what we would do. We would go to a park and we would go play and, take a nap and go to the pool and play. But now we can't do any of that public stuff.
Right.
And so it's a different world.
I remember growing up when I was young. My mom was legally blind, so she didn't drive. But she had strange vision, like depth perception problems. So everything looked like a bad oil painting. There's no distance for her. So she would take in extra money by typing up term papers for college students and stuff like that. And it was so nice. And I look back and I appreciate it more now than I ever did then. But whenever I came home from playing, Mom was there. There was just a constant of home was always available and always, you weren't alone when you were there. Whereas my girls, with my situation, I was a single mom for a long time, and they had to let themselves into the house or go to latchkey or daycare, and there's all these other influences on your kids that you've got to rein back in and correct when they get home. That, I really want to see more of a societal shift back to at least one parent being able to be available all the time, rather than having the kids, shoved someplace so that mommy can go make enough money to help daddy pay the bills. That's forgive me, I'm so
no, you're exactly right. And we made the decision early on, actually, when we found out that my wife was pregnant and I was going to school. It's like, okay, feasibly, what are we going to be able to do on the two incomes that we have, and to care for our daughter. And the first year we were very lucky, and we never had to do daycare because it was either I did classes online, or grandma was able to watch the baby, or her sister was able to watch our oldest. And then she was probably 18 months old before she ever went to a daycare, and that was a Montessori school. So it was a really nice thing to be able to do. Yeah. And in 2000, kind of off topic, but on topic of some the show, in 2016, we found out that my oldest, my 5-year-old, was on the spectrum. Okay. And so that resets everything that you have planned out for what you are going to do and what your kid is going to do. And then we shifted over into, okay, we've got to be able to get her to the schools that she needs to go to, that we need to go to the physical therapy 3 times a week, speech therapy 3 times a week, and occupational therapy, 3 times a week. And so we had to switch over to that mindset of, it's going to be different. And that's, that's one driving force reason that I still work from home. And I have 4 or 5 different jobs, I think, at this point. So not including keeping up with them. So.
Right. Well, I'm glad to see you doing it. I'm glad to see you making it work.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, let's get back to the conversation about coffee. Right? You've got to have a favorite. What's your favorite right now?
One I've never tried before.
Well, then how do you know it's your favorite?
Because I haven't had it yet. That's the
Oh, I get it.
That's the cool thing about getting into this. So coffee is grown in over like 30 or 40 different countries around the world. And each one of those climates is just a little bit different. each one of those farms, in fact, is a little bit different, or the way they process the coffee is a little bit different. And so they all have their own very distinct character and traits. In fact, I'm really excited about this week. On Thursday or Friday, I should have one coffee from a roaster who I've never had his coffee before. And it's from, the coffee was grown in Burundi in Africa, and I've never had a coffee from Burundi. So I'm really excited about the fact I can go have this cup of coffee on Thursday or Friday from a coffee growing region I've never had before. And that's what I like. At this point, it's kind of fun to experiment.
That's awesome. Now, what do you think about these? I've seen some, like there was a Jack Daniel's brand coffee.
Right.
What do you think about those kinds of like additive types of things being added to the coffee, and what's the point of it? Is it flavor? Does it actually get you drunk? What's going on there?
So depending on the barrel aging process, when it comes to like barrel aged stuff, you can, like I've got some port wine barrel aged coffee downstairs that is, it would be perfect coffee to drink with a really, really rich like cheesecake, something really, really creamy, something really heavy bodied, that's really cool. But what I don't necessarily like is when they take really, really cheap coffee, spray it with a bunch of chemicals that taste like whatever, and then they sell it for an expensive price to where you're basically paying a bunch of money for a really cheap product with some flavoring sprayed on it. And then they sell it as it's something special when it's really not special.
That makes sense. I mean, everybody should be about integrity, right? That seems a little shaky.
It is. And there's a lot of times that, flavored coffees will gum up your equipment. If you have your own grinder, you'll have problems with that, just because of they're spraying your coffee with a flavored oil is what it means when it's flavored. And that oil will gum up and go rancid on you if you're not careful, if you don't clean your equipment. So I would caution people who are buying specialty coffee and flavored coffee if you're grinding your own, to use 2 different grinders to do it. Gotcha. That's why at most grocery store chains that you can grind your own coffee, they have a flavored coffee grinder and an unflavored coffee grinder. And you're not supposed to put that flavored coffee into the unflavored. Right.
That's very interesting. That's probably the vanilla hazelnut thing that I've got going on here is sprayed coffee. Now I'm itching. Now I'm going to get hives.
There's some really, really good coffee. In fact, hold on. Let me see what I got here. This is let's see. So this is in the magic of television. There's actually not coffee in this bag. It's just no. You want to know the secret? It's pinto beans.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
They weigh the same. They kind of look the same in the bag. You can't see, and it's weighed. But I'm going to show you something. See if the camera can pick this up here. Let the camera adjust.
Just barely. Gotcha.
Okay, so on this coffee it says. Let's see, where are the flavor notes? Dark chocolate, berry, and brown spice. So that's not necessarily a flavor added to the coffee. It's just the flavor notes that particular roaster thinks that he can taste when he drinks that coffee.
Kind of like wine tasting when they've got oaky scents or whatever
out
of a grape.
It's exactly like wine tasting. Yeah. In fact, there's some. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. What do we got going on? Oh, good job. That's a very good throw. But there's some disputes in the industry between coffee and wine, which has more flavor notes, which has more which has more flavors. And so handy dandy, this is my little wine. This is my flavor chart for coffee. Now they're playing soccer here in the background, so I apologize.
It's all good. It's all good. I would rather hear little girls having joy than little girls, like
they're having a belt. They're having a blast.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay.
I'm going to mute myself for a second. Here, hold on. Hey. Come on. I know. Let's share the ball. Share the ball. Go on again. Share the ball. Okay.
Thanks for hanging in there with us while we're waiting for Chris to come back. I just absolutely adore what's going on. I am enjoying the hell out of this. I was just telling our audience, I am enjoying the hell out of this.
Oh, good.
I really am. It makes me feel good to see parents being able to be there with their kids and attend to their kids when they're needed, because not having that is causing half of the problems we've got out there in the real world right now. Let's fix this. So thanks for being part of the fix.
I see that. I'll be out there in just a minute to play ball with you. You're doing really good. We've got a soccer ball, so we don't know. Yes, ma'am. Oh, that's good. Don't knock over my lights. Good job. Thank you. But it's a fun. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I've got a whole little thing set up out by. We're lucky enough to have a pool, and so in the afternoons, what I typically do is I take my laptop. I go out there. I set up. They play and they swim and they dive and they jump, and I sit there and I answer emails.
Nice.
Or I do social media on my cell phone while I'm out there. Or we'll get in and we'll swim. We've been doing swimming lessons, which is amazing awesome. to watch them take off like little fish.
That's awesome. That's wonderful.
But coffee is definitely a fun, entertaining thing to do.
Well, you were showing me that flavor chart with the flavor notes or whatever.
Yeah, and so there's a whole bunch of different flavor notes that you can find. Yes, ma'am. And we're going to have to end up probably wrapping this up because they're ready to go. I was
just thinking that too.
But thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Now, real quickly before we shut down, I want to make sure that everybody knows that in the comments in the description, you can go and find Chris's YouTube channel and the Common Grounds podcast. And then also Chris has a special offer for our viewers. And that is when you go to your website, roastersmarketplace.com, and make your first order, use the coupon code SUMMER for free shipping, correct?
Free shipping on their first order. Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. So do you have final thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience before we shut down for the day?
Well, I would say that if they're interested in specialty coffee, to look locally to where they're not necessarily go to my website, but most towns or most big cities will have multiple local small batch coffee roasters that you can find amazing coffee from, and they'll help you with your coffee journey. And if you want to go to my website, then amazing. That's what I would love for you to do as well. But find me on social media, Roasters Marketplace, on Twitter, on Instagram, Facebook. I will gladly tell you, help you with your journey, recommend a coffee. I would recommend people start with a breakfast blend because that's typically what coffee to you would taste like. Mm-hmm. You're not going to find something that tastes like blueberries and stone fruit, but you're going to find, chocolate and really good breakfast coffee. So start at a breakfast coffee.
Awesome.
The amazing part is that one that you hear in the background is the one that is on the spectrum. And she's about a year behind on her speech now, but it's miles and miles and miles away from what she was just like 2 years ago. So it's
phenomenal.
I love hearing her talk and sing and have conversations and come in and say, Daddy, I want to play soccer. Okay, let's do it.
Awesome.
So thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Thank you for being here, and go play with those girls. Have fun.
Thank you.
Take care. When
Bye. Have a
you
good
open
day.
yourself up to actual energy work, makes that recovery progress so much faster. That recovery is possible. You do not have to live as a victim until your last days. You have unbelievable strength, and I know that because you're still here. Do you want to create something completely unrecognizable with your life? I can show you how.